So really quickly, I got caught up completely with my grading yesterday, so we're pretty caught up. Um, I heard from a couple of people questioning about a grade here or there, whatever. If you take a look, you can see your grades in this class always. So I mean, whatever's been graded. Um, So if there's a mistake or something, or I misunderstood something, whatever, just reach out. I have no problem fixing that, working that out. So just reach out. But in that, I wanted to show you guys a snapshot of how this class is doing and just have a quick conversation about that. So you're not going to be able to tell whose grades are whose because this has all just been, I've sucked all of this out. This is the grade point average on the column A. This is the letter grade in B, and then these are the assignments. And some people would say that this is a perfect distribution because I've got like 3 or 4 A's, I've got 3 or 4 F's. I don't want a perfect distribution. I want the people that are down in this area right here to pull up into the top. So this is just my chance to say that we're a little over a third of the way through this semester, right? Everybody who's down in this lower group down here can actually pull themselves completely up. This may be too ambitious. I'm certain you can get up to a B. You might even be able to get up to an A still at this stage of the game. But now's the time to really focus on this. The time to not be turning stuff in, because that's really the major culprit here. It's not that people are doing badly on their grades, it's that people are just not turning stuff in. And so if you don't turn stuff in, you're going to get those zeros. Those zeros are going to tank your grade. So I just want to point this out as sort of like a call of desperation at this stage of the game to say, okay, we've all sort of gotten into this now. We're all in this together. I need the people who are in this lower group in here to pick up the slack. So to that end, I also want to say that there's only 1 or 2 people who in this class have reached out to me for help. I am here to help you. I can help you outside of class. I have office hours. I meet people in all sorts of hours other than office hours. I don't do shit at night, but other than that, I'm here. If you're struggling or something, you don't get something, whatever, you can't get it in the video, you don't understand that part, whatever, simply reach out to me. But another thing about this, because this is also happening, is that people who have got late work are focusing on the late work first before the current work. So if you do that, if that's your method, whatever, then everything ends up being late. So word to you right now is that focus on the current assignment as it is right now, and then once you get that in, then you can go back and revisit the late work, but don't focus on the late work. If you just do that, then every assignment just gets knocked into the late category, and that will tank your grade as well. So are there any questions about any of this? Okay. I do want to take a look at some of the work that got turned in, and then we will start today. Today's about retouching. We actually get into the meat and bones of that. So, shoot. No, the proposal, just put that in on Canvas. It's an easy one. Yeah, good question, though. Do what? Oh, I'm going to stay in Zoom because Sarah is at her house, but you guys do not. You can all, everybody here in this room can leave Zoom. Oh, and I sent you guys also another email about work for the photography catalog. Did everybody get that? We haven't talked about that yet really quickly, so I do want to touch on that part really fast. So give me 1 second. And I'm going to do that right now because we're kind of at the deadline right now. Okay, so if you've been in one of my other classes already, I've already gone through this, but just for anyone who's not, just a couple things I want to point out right here. So the School of Visual Arts is doing individual catalogs for every program in the School of Visual Arts. So they're doing one for photography, one for illustration, and one for fine art. They're not mixing them up, so you're not going to have your work stuck in there with a bunch of illustrators or other, not that that would be bad, but I'm just saying that's not how it's scheduled to play out. It's going to be work made up of juniors and seniors from this year, and then some of the recent alumni. They are looking at alumni. For instance, there was people who graduated last semester who would be, they will still be a part of Manifest this year. Everybody in this, everybody in this room familiar with Manifest, what it is? Anybody not? Okay, so you guys know that we're heading in that direction. It's an incredible event. I mean, it's a way to celebrate your work, your achievements, all of that kind of stuff. This is just this is sort of like an add-on for all of that. So the plan of this is that they would actually have these catalogs not only for Manifest, but even before that, to be able to actually show to prospective students, admitted student day, that kind of stuff. This is what goes on at Columbia College. This is what's happening, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, they're really interested in collecting work. I have promised them, this work was actually due before they announced it to anyone in the photo department. So they're way behind. It's gonna be printed, so they need to play catch up quick. So our deadline for this is pretty much today. If you came to me and said, I've got this amazing piece, I'll have it done tomorrow morning, whatever, I will get you in tomorrow morning, but pretty much afternoon tomorrow, it's over. So I'm hoping to collect work from everyone in this class, if that's possible. If not, I understand that, but that's what I'm interested in, is getting work from you guys. So again, just so that you know, you can refer back to this announcement that went out. It went out on the 27th of February, so it was last week. So you can refer to it because it has specifics how you are actually supposed to be formatting something. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to format something, just so that you will have this in the video as well if you need to. So in Photoshop, yeah, I'm just going to, old image of mine. Okay, so I've got an image in Photoshop, and this is the specs that are actually set up for this. So if we go back to the announcement, so they want a TIFF or a JPEG. They do not want a PDF or a PNG or any other format, so don't do any other format. Just these two are the two options. The shortest side of your image should measure 1,500 pixels. All images should be color corrected and properly cropped. Again, these need to be finalized so that when you send it to them, they don't need to figure that part out. There's a specific naming convention they're asking you to use. It starts with image number, no space, no underline, no nothing, last name, first name, then an underscore, title of the work if you have one, and then a period with an extension on the end. And again, the extension on the end will either be a TIFF or a JPEG. If your work is not titled, I would go ahead and put in untitled there just to make sure that they don't, they understand that part. This is basically what it would look like. The first image by Bart Simpson titled Great Painting would be this. Anyway, the deadlines again, I set the deadline today. You guys had the longest to actually work on this, but I did tell people in my other classes that they could also send me work today. So you can send me work today. Do not drop this stuff in the server. I have got a hard drive right here that I will pass around during class today. In the case of like Sarah, who's not here, you can actually send me this stuff via Smash. If you don't, Smash Transfer, if you don't have stuff ready to go now, that's fine. You can still work on this stuff tonight and get it to me first thing in the morning. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so I do have a hard drive that I can pass around. If anybody, does anybody have work that they are, oh, perfect, good. Then I'm gonna start it over there. The hard drive is just gonna go around, guys. If you take a look at the, there's a folder on that hard drive just to make sure you know where to put it. That folder on the hard drive looks just like this. There's an underscore which sets it up at the very top. If you're looking at a list or a column setup of this, it'll put it at the very top. Underscore photography catalog SP25 Dropbox. Just put your images in there, but please, please, please make sure that they are formatted correctly, named correctly, all of that kind of stuff before you drop. So I'm going to show you how to do this formatting part really fast. So let's just say that this is my final image and this is what I want to go ahead and submit. You'll notice I've got 2 layers right here. You want to flatten your file, even though the way I'm going to save this would flatten it regardless. But I'm going to flatten the file. Just come over to the image on the right hand side, click on a drop down menu and say flatten image. I've got a single layer to do this. This is my final cropping in here. If I was going to change the cropping, you would want to go ahead and do that first, but I'm not. I'm going to do this image. So then you want to come up to the image menu. We need to resize this so that it is exactly the specs that they're asking for. Up to the image menu, down to image size. And in image size here, in this drop-down menu on the right-hand side, typically when you open this up, it'll come in as inches because most of you guys have your ruler set up to work in inches. But you can change this to be any unit of measure. So click on this. You want to actually pick pixels. And then you want to make sure that this resample has got a check mark next to it, because again, we are going to resample this. We're downsizing. In this case, we're downsizing this. So that's what you would want to do. If you've got less than 1,500 pixels on your smallest edge, you need to consider going to find the original file and working from that. Don't try to take an image that is been scaled down for social media and then bump it up to this size here. It'll fall apart and you really won't be happy about that. So at any rate, the shortest of my dimensions here is the width. Again, this image is much taller than it is wide. So the smallest dimension, which is what they're asking for, the width here needs to be 1,500 pixels. So you simply type in 1,500 pixels. Now, the fact that there is a chain link between these two, it will actually rescale this and keep it in proportion. Again, we are resampling this, so it's going to downsample it. In terms of the resample, I would leave this as automatic. If you're going to downsample, I would either leave it as automatic, or you can actually change it down here to, I would leave it as automatic. Okay, and then just say okay. And you'll see my image is now smaller. If you go back and check it again now, image to image size, you'll see that it indeed is 1,500 pixels. So this part's actually good for me right now. Now at this stage of the game, if you are going to save this as a TIFF, which you can do, you first need to change this to sRGB for the profile. Again, this is going to be printed, and that is what they are actually asking for. That's what they should be asking for. Let me check the specs really quick and see if that's what they're saying on here. No, of course they don't put anything in here about color correction. No, anyway, you want to. So to change this to save as a TIFF, you first need to change the profile. If you click on the very bottom left-hand side of your image, there's a drop-down menu here that allows you to see different things. I always have mine set to document profile, so that's the color space my image is in. I'm working in Adobe RGB. You guys typically, you know that that's the standard what I work in, and hopefully what you are working in as well. So to change that, you come up to the edit menu and you come down to color set. No, I'm sorry, not color settings. Assign profile or convert to profile. That's what we're going to do. We're going to convert this to a profile. And in the opening up of this dialog box, you'll see that the destination space, this is what we actually need to change. We are going to change the source space is fixed. It is what it is. But the destination space, if you click on this drop-down menu, you can come down and say, I want you to do this in sRGB, and click OK. You'll now see that down here at the bottom, it should be sRGB, and it is. And then you would save this as a TIFF. So up to the File menu, down to Save As. In the drop-down menu for format, you would pick TIFF. And then you would put this in the folder where you put this wherever. Again, you would name this. In my case here, if this was the first image that I was going to do, it would be 01 Engelhard, ENGELHARD, Verser _ untitled. And then that's it. It will actually pick up the .tiff actually exists right there. That's how you would save this file, and that's what you would turn into me. That's the TIFF version. If you're going to do a JPEG version, which is fine, I'm going to go back. You do not need to convert this to sRGB if you're going to do this as a JPEG, because I'm going to show you how I think is the best way to do JPEGs. This is also the way you should be doing stuff for your website, for any of your social media accounts, anything that's going to be online. You should be doing exporting JPEGs the way I'm going to show you right now. So again, I'm gone back in size. All I've done is I've flattened this image and I've resized it. That's all I've done. To then do the export, come up to the File menu and come down to Export, and then on the flyout menu you want to come down to this Save for Web in parentheses Legacy. This has been around in Photoshop forever. People, again, this is another one of those typical things of Adobe, something that's really, really, really good, and they decide to fuck it up or get rid of it. So at any rate, but it's still there. It's been here. It's been called Legacy now for, I don't know, last 5 years. So this is where you want to go. Go ahead and pick that. The first time this dialog box opens up, you'll probably only see a single image called Original, but on the tabs along the very top, you want to pick what is called a 4-up. This will show you 4 different resolutions of this image. If you take your hand, and that's the icon that you'll get in here, and move it around, you can see the changes that happen at different settings of compression for JPEGs. So for instance, this is the original one right here. This is a high quality one. You see this blue line that is around it. That's the one that is actually determined in this drop-down dialog box right here. Also, when you first come in here, usually GIF is the version of file. This is the format that comes on by default the very first time. Once you actually pick JPEG here, this stays sticky. You won't have to ever change that again. But what you're going to do is select this second box here. You don't want to change the original. You want something to compare it to. Select the second box right here. And again, in this drop-down menu, you can say maximum, high, very high. You don't need to do maximum, very high, or high. Either one will work really well. There's a slider over here. All you've really done is changed what's in this slider. If you can pick any value you want in this slider, but you'll see here in this high version, the one again that's surrounded with the blue box, there is an equality of 80. This is the size of the image that I'm going to actually send to them. So it's just under a megabyte, which is fine here. You do want to then leave these check marks as optimized and as color, embed color profile, but importantly, this is where you convert. So here you would check and make sure that this convert to sRGB is selected. And once you've done all of that, you can just recheck to make sure that your image size is correct, and then simply hit save. And again, once you hit saved, you would go to the same naming convention, the 01 Engelhard Verser underscore untitled, and just leave it as a JPEG at the end of that and save it, and you're off to the races. So they're asking for 3 to 5 images. Can you send 6 or 7? Of course, don't send more than 8. Any questions about any of this? Images that, your art. I mean, that's what they're really interested in. So it can be anything. It can be your commercial work, your artwork. If you're a doc person, it can be your doc work. I mean, whatever it is that you do, this is my work. If you think about Manifest is actually going to be, hopefully everyone here will participate in Manifest. Your work will actually be up on the walls. So what would that be? All right. Any other questions? All right, this would be a great time for a break. I have 2:15. Let's make it a hard 10, guys. Be back at 2:25, and we will start. We'll look at some work and start retouching. Did the sign-in sheet get around? And did everybody get on it? No, that's just everybody get on it. Did the hard drive get around to everybody who wanted it? Okay. Well, so again, so. Eventually I need the sign-in list, and eventually everybody needs to get a hold of the hard drive, and we'll be good. Okay, so really quickly, I'm not going to spend a great deal of time looking at the stuff that got turned in, but I do want to look at a couple of examples of stuff to just sort of have a comment to show you just a couple things here. So I'm going to look at this really quickly. And while this is opening up, I'm just going to reiterate to everyone once again, This happens every semester, and it happens in every single class, every semester. People start like drifting away from the naming convention, and all of a sudden now I've got people with dates before their names. I've got people using their first name first and then their last name. I get shit all over the place. So remember the naming convention, last name underscore first name underscore assignment number. That's all I need from you. Thanks. Okay. If what?
It was like something I was having an issue with.
Okay, ask me after class. Okay, I'm going to start with one from Aaron really quickly. Oh, so this is the Coca-Cola one. And I can get rid of the beach. And this. So this is basically what I do when I look at this stuff. For those of you who did the fill-in layer, whatever, that was great. But again, it's really hard to look at a path with that much color around it. So typically I turn that off. I click on the path to actually make it active. You can see the blue path and it looks really good right now. Then I'm going to grab the white selection tool. And again, this one you can also drag across and take a look at stuff. And what I pick up here is that it seems like an enormous number of points. Way too many that would, you don't need that many. And this is typically what happens when you first start doing this work. I'm going to click on a single one of his path, and you can see how little bitty short that control handle. This is the control handle right here. You can see how absolutely short that guy is. So that's the problem that everybody runs into doing this stuff. So so instead, you can see like here. There's I'm just going to do this really quickly. Sometimes there's again, there's no need for like these many points. So I'm just going to show you really quickly what I mean. I'm going to select this guy and simply get rid of it. Hit the P key, and I'm just going to start here. And I can do this entire arc right here in one single point. So it's what you see happen a lot when people first start doing it. People get nervous about it and they just do too many points, and then I would just go on. So again, what you did was fine. The path worked out great. It just seems like a whole lot of work to me. So again, to make it just faster, think about it along those terms right there. So, but again, the path was beautiful. Just, yeah, you guys get where it's going. Okay. I'm going to take a look at I is metal now. So here, and this happened for, I was really encouraged in this class. Most people actually got it. There was a sort of an unknown gotcha in this. You guys know me well enough now to know that I do that every now and then. But part of it was that everybody made the path of the girl. That part worked out pretty well for most people. Maybe one person didn't make it, made a different slide. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But then if you took the girl layer and moved it to the metal, you left the path behind. The path remained back in the image of the girl where it came from. So the trick in all of this was to actually move the metal from its image over to the girl. That way you actually kept the two, you kept it all together. The girl and the path and the mask and all of that stuff were together in there. But really quickly looking at this, so this is what the path looked like. It was really well done. However, when I get to the layer mask right here, this has now been all combined into one. I don't have the girl floating up here anymore. I don't have a version of the girl anymore. I don't have a mask that's actually knocking her out anymore. I don't have, all of that stuff is like gone. So again, not the only one who did this. No, a number of people, again, I don't know where you get taught to apply layer masks, but the whole beauty of them is that you don't have to apply them. And then forevermore, for all of time, if you can get that file open, you can still refine it. You can continue to work on it because the whole image is there. It's just a mask is hiding part of it. So again, this idea that people are like moving stuff around, don't move stuff around. Don't apply masks. You can move stuff around. I'm going to show you a trick with this in just a second about the best way to deal with keeping all of this stuff together. So I'm going to show you one more really quickly that's going to be the perfect lead into this. And it'll be the last one we look at, and then I'm going to ask everyone to open these images. Open up the one that you did, and I'm going to show you how you would keep this all connected. So really quickly, I want to show you Ty's Girl on Metal. So on this, everything looks right. Again, the path part was good right there. Again, it's a layer that's actually layer mask on it. That part's all good. The mask is still there. It hasn't been removed. So again, what I'm talking about really quickly, Ty did not do this. I'm going to do it right now just so to make sure everybody understands what I mean about don't apply these masks. Right now, if I hold down the Shift key and click on this mask, you can see the whole image is still there. If, on the other hand, I take this mask and throw it down into the trash and it says, do you want to apply this thing? And I say, yes, I do. Then this is now what I am left with. There is no way I can refine this. If I made a mistake and cut something off, I can't go back in and fix it. If I didn't get enough, I can't go back and fix that. And if I save this, there's no longer a copy of that girl that has the background part to it. So there's no way I can refine any of this. It's just gone. So don't do that. But the other thing that I wanted to show you in here was this. If I turn the path on, take a look at this. Anybody see a problem? The path is no longer in register with the girl. So the path is now useless to me. Absolutely useless. I can't use it. Ty, how long did it take you to draw the path? How long did it take the rest of you to draw the path? Right? It's a half-hour work minimum would be my guess. 15, 20 minutes if you're really good at it, right? So, yeah, you don't want to do that. Okay, so I want to start with a fresh version of this. So does everybody have a copy of this file that has got a path on it that is still in register with the girl? Does anybody not have that? No, that's okay. Does anybody not have that? All right, well, we'll see. All right, we're going to take a look at this really quickly. Let me find one that I thought was actually really well done. Hang on one second. We'll go back to Aaron. So you get to show both because the other one also was actually really well done. So I'm just going to show people. I'm going to use yours if you don't mind. Okay. Okay, so, yeah, it's in a smart object, which is going to complicate things a little bit. So, and there's nothing wrong with doing this. So Aaron actually, if I double click on the smart object, you can see that the mask is sitting here in the smart object and the path is actually here with it. The problem is that this is separated out on its own right now. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to leave this out as it is right now. And I'm going to, if you click on the smart object, click on your drop-down menu, you can convert your smart object back to layers. So that's what I think I'm going to do. I never do this, so hopefully that will work. So that gives me the smart object, but it converted it to a layer, so I don't get the layer mask, and I also don't get the path. So I'm going to find a different one. Okay, got one. So Ava's has the bits and pieces that I need for here. So yeah, you can see that the body path exists. If I click on this, you can see the outline still matches that. If I take a look at the layers, the only thing that Ava didn't do, and this again, this happened to a whole lot of people, they didn't do this part. There's an easy fix for it, but nonetheless, I'm going to zoom in on this pretty tight. And you can see that the edges of this just look so hardly cut out. I mean, they're cut out. They're very obviously cut out. It's a path tool, a pen tool, whatever. So if you take a look at the mask by itself, I'm just going to hold down the Option key and click on it. You can see how our hard edge this is. Again, which is what you want the pen tool to do, but then you need to soften this up to make it just a little bit easier on that. So there's two ways of doing this. I'm going to throw this mask away right now and show you the first way of doing it. So the first way would be to actually select the path tool, hold down the Command key and click on it to load it as a selection. Go back to my layers palette, but before I actually apply this as a mask, I'm going to say I want to filter this, and I'm going to I'm sorry, I'm not filtering this. I'm going to modify this. So up to the select menu, down to modify down to feather, and I'm going to put a 1 pixel feather on this. Again, the higher the resolution of your file, the higher the radius you would want to do this here. The lower the resolution, the lower the radius you would actually do. But I'm going to try 1. It should actually be enough. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply this as a layer mask. Now, I'm going to do a screenshot of this just to show you guys the difference in this edge. So I can screenshot this, and I'm going to call this feathered. And say okay, and then I can go back to Ava's original one. So you can see how hard that is, and then you can see how soft that is, and how hard that is, and how soft that is. So this is actually, we would want to balance that out a little bit better like that. However, so that's one way of doing it. And that's the old way to do it. The new way of doing it, because I've actually added this now, if you select the layer, right now, if I select the image, my properties panel is showing me how I can modify the image. But if I select the layer mask, then my properties changes, and this is how I can modify my layer mask. And you can see one of the options I have in here is feather. So I can bump this up to a 1 pixel feather here and get the exact same effect. And in some ways, this might be a preferable way of doing it, because this way, if the feathering is too strong, you can always come back in and dial it back down a little bit. If it's not strong enough, you can actually bump it up a little bit more. So anyway, this would be the way to do it. But nonetheless, I'm going to get rid of that all right now and just talk about what this, how to connect now our path to this. So with everybody who has this image open, or a image open, what I want you to do, the first thing is that I want you to select your figure, and I want you to transform it, Command T. Or if you can't remember that, go up to the Edit menu, come down to Free Transform, and scaling is the first thing that will actually happen. Then I want you to go to the top of the, let me make sure I got this video going again, all right? Yep. I want you to go up to the options bar up at the very top, click on the chain link between W and H, so the chain link between the width and the height, so that when I change one of them, it changes the other one to keep the proportions, the ratio of the proportions the same. And then I'm just going to hover over the height slider and grab, I get the scrubby slider with my icon, with my cursor over the H. It's the hand with the arrow pointing both left and right. If you click and then go to the left, it makes things smaller. And I'm just going to make mine smaller. So I'm down to around 50%. You just need to make it smaller and click OK. And you can see when you do that now, if you go back into your path palette and you click on it and say, show me the path, the two are no longer in relationship to one another. They are now completely whacked out of shape, and there's no way to fix this. That's all I can say. So instead, I'm going to go back in history to where I had my image original. I'm going to take a look at now first, before I add the path to this, I want to take a look at the mask itself. So I am going to now transform the figure and not the mask. It's the same problem. So if you click on the chain link between the figure, the pixel layer on that top layer, and the mask, you break that connection. So earlier, the thing when I just did the transform and made it smaller, it also made the layer mask smaller. So it kept it in relationship to one another. But now if I click on the image and I only transform it, Command T, and again, click on the link between width and height, hover over the scrubby slider, drag it down to make it smaller, you can see that the layer mask itself, look at it, you can see it did not get transformed, and you can see the only thing that's like showing here in the girl is, so that's completely off here. Does that make sense what's going on to everyone, what's happening here? So that's not a good sign. I think I lost Sarah. I'm going to pause the video really quickly to see if I can't recover really quickly. We're going to soldier on, and Sarah can just watch the video. Okay, so back in my situation right here, I'm going to go back in history again. I typically just click on the history state of when this image opened, which is up at the very top. If you just click on that, it brings it back to where it is. So anyway, the thing to realize is that really quickly, I'm going to show you one last time. I'm selecting the very top layer, the image layer, and I'm going to hit Command T to transform this. Click on the link between the width and the height, make it really small again. You can see it makes the mask really small as well. These two are always in sync because of this chain link in between the two of them. So I'm going to hit the circle at the very top with a slash through it to undo that transform. And now what I want to do is, in order to keep my path connected to this, I need to actually add it to the layer. And the way you do it is this. Go ahead and make sure that your top image is selected. Your top layer is selective. Click on the path palette and click on the image itself. Click on the path so that it actually shows. Come back to your layers palette and then add another mask. We're going to click on the add layer mask again. So again, the square at the bottom with the little circle in it. If you click on that, it will actually add, and you'll see it gives you a copy. It's a second layer mask. It's on a gray background with a white figure. That's to tell you that this actually is a vector mask. What vector means is the path. So the path itself is a vector. They call this a vector mask. But now it is actually connected to my image. And to show you what that means is that I am now going to transform my image again. So Command T to transform my image. I'm going to click on the link between the width and the height. I'm going to drag this down to make it actually smaller. And you can see my path is actually getting smaller with it. If we go into our image, you can also see that the vector mask is now its own separate path. And so here in this, if I go ahead and click OK to this, which I'm going to do, I'll just click on the check mark to say OK to that. I've now got a small copy of the path, and if I click on it to highlight it, it has actually also been made smaller. So everybody got smaller. Even better, if I hit the V key to get the move tool, I can move this thing around, and once I move it around, you'll also notice that the pixel mask, which is what we would call our typical mask, the black and white one, that's a pixel mask, something you can paint on, and the vector mask is sitting right here. Even better, if I go to my file, up to my, I'm just going to do a brand new file. So what I want to do is I want to move this figure now to another image. So I'm just going to create my own blank image. So Command N to bring up a new dialog box. If you're using the old dialog box like I do, one of the additional advantages, not only can you get clipboard in here, but if you click on this document type drop-down menu, you can actually pick the original image. So I'm going to do a new image, but because I picked this one of Ava's, it will actually populate this image with exactly the pixel dimensions of the original one. And so I'm going to say OK. So now I've got a new blank image that is identical in size to the image that this is coming from. I'm going to click back onto the image where it's coming from. I'm going to grab this layer. Again, I don't use tabbed images. That's why I can see them both separate from each other right now. With the image that's got the girl in it on the metal background, selected. It's in the foreground. I'm going to click on the layer, the top layer here, and I'm going to click and drag it over onto my new blank white background. I'm going to hold down the Shift key to bring this in centered and let go. This has now been brought in, and you can see here, I'm going to close up the first one. I'm not going to save it. But you can see on this image now, I have not only got the girl, I've also got the pixel mask, and I've also got the path. And if I click on path, you can see it's sitting right here. And if I click on it and grab my direct selection tool, you can actually see all of the points. And they're here. They've all been rescaled. So this is how you would always connect your path to what you used to create it. So you can move it around, you can scale it up and down, forever. You can make all those changes. It does not matter. It will always be connected, but you've got to add it to the layer. Otherwise, it simply won't go. So again, typically if I hadn't had this connected, I would have not been able to have brought this. When I brought the image of the girl over, the path would have been left behind in the original image. Does this make sense, everyone? Questions about this? Alrighty. Check that off the list. Okay. I'm not going to save that. So going into the stuff that we need to do for this week, this is session 6. So if we take a look inside our session 6, there is, actually there's something I wanted to get to before this that we didn't get to last week. Yeah, and I have time to do that. So we need to go back. Before we do retouching tools today, I want everybody to go back to session 5. And inside of session 5, there is a file called Choke and Spread. I need everybody to open that up for me, please. So it should be a picture of a girl in the woods. Everybody have this? Anybody not have this? Okay. So if you zoom in really closely to this girl, I want to come into her upper shoulder. You'll actually see that there's this green line that goes completely around her. And the reason this green line exists, if you come over to the layer that's on the very top, hold down your Shift key and click on the layer mask, it'll get rid of it. And you can actually see it right here. What happens in digital files is, because of the nature of digital files, when you actually develop a file, so we've developed this in Camera Raw, or you develop it in Lightroom, or you develop it in Capture One, or you develop it in Bibble, wherever you develop this thing, it happens in every single developer without exception. There's a certain inherent softening that happens, and so those developing programs look for edges in an image, and they run contrast on those edges. And so that is what's happening here. If you take a look at this girl right here, you can actually see, or maybe it's just me, it doesn't look so good on this screen, but you can certainly see it on my, my laptop screen. You can see that the area of green that's immediately around her, shoulder is much darker. Does that make, can you see that? If your screens are not bright enough, brighten them up. Even though this isn't, again, what I would suggest for doing color correction, that way you at least be able to see it. That is a contrast move. So what contrast is what it's doing is, it's saying, okay, this edge right here, instead of it just being the same green that the background was, we need to make a contrast here, so it's made it darker on this edge. And so then when I actually do the knockout, I select this green background, but that darker green is not selected. It's a completely different green than the color of this background. It's much darker. So the problem is, if you then now hold down the Shift key and click on the layer mask to bring it back, the problem is that it leaves this green edge behind, and this green edge exists all the way around her. If you take a look, it doesn't matter where you go. Look at her, again, any edge, that's all I'm looking at here. The stuff that's on her glove is spill, but this stuff around her, the stuff that's up on this edge underneath her arm part, her sleeve right here, that's all because of this contrast issue. It's unavoidable. So we need a way to fix this. You don't want to actually go in and try and screw around with this thing. So if you remember when I said to you when we were going through the select and mask workspace, all of those global controls about expanding an edge, reducing an edge, contracting an edge, all of that kind of stuff, I said it's much better to do this manually. Well, this is the manual doing it right now. So before we do this, though, we actually need to take a look at how this process works. So leave this file open, but I need you to create a new synthetic file for me, just a brand new one. So Command N to create a new file. In the dialog box that opens up, I'm going to click on my drop-down menu and select inches. For my width, I'm going to put in 10. I'm going to just hit the tab key to go to my height. I'm going to put in 8. I'm just doing an 8 by 10 on its size. And 300 pixels per inch will be fine. Working space, everything else here is fine. So I'm going to just go ahead and say OK to this. So I've got this working space that's actually sitting right here. So how do I want to do this? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to go to the marquee tool, so the rectangular marquee tool, second tool down on the tool on the left-hand side, just the regular marquee tool. Make sure that when you select this tool, you check up at the very top that feathered is set to 0. We want to make a very hard selection here, and that the style on this is normal, not fixed or not fixed size or fixed ratio, either one. It's set to normal, and then just come to the middle of your image and just drag out a square line for me. Everybody good on this part? Okay. I need to know where this square line is. So before we do anything else to this, I want to put guidelines that will actually border this so that you can see some idea of what's really happening in all of this. So to do that, you need to make sure that your rulers are showing. If your rulers do not have, I'm talking about my rulers that on the very top edge of my image and on the left side of my image, that's the only place they show up. If they're not showing, go up to the view menu and come down. There's a thing called rulers, sort of 2/3 of the way down. Just make sure there's a check mark next to it and you will have rulers. And then to pull a guideline out, you simply hover your cursor over the ruler, click and drag, and it'll pull a line out. As you get near the top of the marching ants, it will snap to the marching ants, and we've got our first guideline. Did that work for everyone? We're going to do another guideline for the bottom. So again, right up to the top ruler again, click and drag down, and another one will snap to the bottom line. And then we're going to do ones from the left-hand side for both the vertical lines. So one on this side, and then one on the other side. And there we go. So at this stage of the game, I want to fill this square with black. So hit the D key to default your foreground and background colors to black and white. I've still got marching ants. You want to make sure you still do have the marching ants. If black is your background color, hit the X key and make it your foreground color, or vice versa. You just want to make sure black is your foreground color. And then again, the keyboard shortcut for filling with a foreground color is Option Delete. And then finally Command D to deselect. So now basically you should have a square that's got guidelines around it, a black square on white background. Did that work for everyone? Okay, good. Zoom into this. I'm going to again hold down my Shift key and my Command key just to get the magnifying glass. I'm going to zoom into this edge right now. And what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to blur this image. So to do that, come up to your filter menu and come down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And I'm going to put in a blur on this of like 6 pixels. Yeah, 6 will be fine. And say OK. And if you zoom way into this, you can see, what does a blur really mean? Well, take a look at my screen up here really quickly, because I'm just going to go back and forth between my Command Z. If I go back like this, so with a completely sharp image, I go from black to white on a completely sharp edge. If I blur this though, what a blur does is it creates the illusion that there is a transition now from the black center to the white exterior, to the white background. There's shades of gray now that I've introduced in between these two, and you can see them right here. If you look up at your info palette, as you drag across this edge, if you start down here in the middle of the black, you can see that I'm reading 000 in the black. As I start to push through this, though, you will actually start to see numbers. Now I'm at 28s. Now I'm at 37s. Now 40. These are all midtones of gray. As I continue to work my way up, I start to get into the true midtones of gray, which is around 130. As I'm working my way continued up whatever, I start to get into lighter tones, highlight tones, and then finally, if I go all the way up, I've landed into white. So what I've done when I've blurred this thing is I've actually introduced shades of gray in between black and white. Does that make sense to everyone? What's going on? Are we good on this? Okay, I can leverage this now. And the way I'm going to leverage this is this. I'm going to hit levels, Command L. You do not do this as an adjustment layer. Command L will bring up the levels dialog box. And I can use this dialog box to reassign what those mid-tone levels of gray are going to be. So watch what happens. Remember, those guidelines was my original, right? So if I click on the shadow, the black point that's underneath my histogram in the levels dialog box on the far left-hand side, if I click and I start to move towards the center, what I'm saying is I want those midtones of gray to be black. And if I continue to work my way all the way up, you can see I am causing this black to expand. This is called a spread. Make sense? And try it. You can undo it. You can drag that black point all the way back again, and you'll see you'll go back to the part here. So I'm going to do now the opposite. I'm going to click on the white point slider, and I'm going to start moving that towards the center. And now what I'm saying is I want you to take those midtones of gray and make them white. And when I do that, my image actually starts to move inside these lines. This is called a choke. Choking and spreading. What they're doing is they're making your mask larger or smaller, which is exactly what we need to do to get rid of that dreaded green line. Does this make sense? It will in just a second, with a twist. Okay, I'm going to zoom back up here so I can see that shoulder again. It's the easiest place to see what we're really looking and trying to do. If you hold down your Option key and you click on the layer mask itself, you can see that there's a few tones of gray in between that white and black, because it's not a sharp line. It's not look like it's been cut out with the pen tool. It hasn't been like that. So again, I've got a few tones in there, but I need more in there to actually make this thing work. However, before I do that, I am going to leverage history in this process. Because what happens in this process is that for the vast majority of this mask, it needs to be choked so that I get rid of the green line on the close. But the problem is that if I choke the mask on her hair, it will destroy her hair. Also, if I choke it on her feet, there's a good chance it will eat into the bottom of her feet and she will lose the bottom of her shoes. We'll take a look at that in just a second. So to prevent that from happening, or to allow me to recover from that happening, we employ what we call history states. So right now, I have not done anything to this image. I've got, you need to make sure that the layer mask is turned on, that you're basically looking at this problem. So has everybody got the green line showing? Okay, come over to your history palette, and at the very bottom is a thing that looks like a camera. You're gonna click on that. In a dialog box, if you guys were working on the version of Photoshop I'm working on, you would get this dialog box that would allow you to name this state. You guys don't have that because you're in the newest, greatest version of Photoshop that is all fucked up. Adobe, please hear me and please fix your shit and quit sending out this crap software and charging us a fortune for it. May you all burn in hell. You think I'm a little fired up about this? Come on, doesn't this piss you off? The amount of, well, anyway, pisses me off. All right, so you can't do it, but I'm going to show you how to fix yours in a second. So I'm going to just do mine the way you're going to have to do yours. So this dialog box did not show up for you, so I'm just going to hit OK. Mine didn't show up. You will see that up underneath the choke and spread, which is the title of the image at the very top of your history palette, that is what your image looked like when you opened it up. That's all you need. The thing that's under it should be called snapshot number 1. We need to rename that. So simply double click on it. And when you double click on it is where we run into the problem. So when you see, I just double clicked on it so I can rename it. It just erased all my history, everything that I've done in here, which I can't have happen, but I can fix that. So I'm going to rename that snapshot 1 pre-choke. Please do this with me. You're going to do this for the whole rest of your lives, so you might as well learn it now. So that's what I'm going to call it. However, I need to have this history intact. So once I name it, I'm going to go back down to the very bottom and click on it, the bottom of my history state. So now I've got a pre-choke version. This is what my image looks like before I actually do the choke process. Does that make sense to everyone? Are we good on this part? Okay. So, and everybody's selected the bottom history state as well, right? Yeah, you shouldn't have to go through all of this, but thank you, Adobe. So then you want to click on the layer mask. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like on my layer mask. Don't do this yet, just hang on 1 second. I'm going to just do this so that you can see it. So this is my layer mask. I've got my brackets around the layer mask. I'm going to blur it, exactly what we just did before. So up to the filter menu, down to blur, over to Gaussian blur. And you'll see with a blur of 6 that I've now got a bunch of tones of gray in between this. And with those tones of gray, I can then ultimately, after this blur, use levels to either choke or spread my mask. So I'm going to cancel this because I want to see this in real time. I have a pretty good judge of this when I'm watching it. There's an art to this. That's all I can tell you is that there's no magic number. It's not going to be always 3. It's not always going to be 6. It's not going to always be that. It's just, you'll get a feel for it. So I'm going to do this while I watch it. You guys can do this with me. So with the layer mask again selected, up to the filter menu, down to blur, down to Gaussian blur. And that 6 is too much for me. Again, I know just looking at this image. So I'm going to pop it down to about a 3 or a 4. If this all goes wrong, you don't need to worry about it. You need to simply go back in history and do it all over again with a different number. So if this is not working for us with a radius of 3, and we feel like we need more, we need to be able to choke it more, whatever, then you just undo it in history, go back, and then do it with a radius of 4. And then, or if it, whatever, you guys get where this is going. So I'm going to go ahead and say yes, and you'll see it makes the problem worse, correct? But now watch what happens. With the mask still selected, Command L to bring up the levels dialog box, grab the black point slider and start to push it towards the middle. And you are now choking your image. You're choking the mask. And you can see that green border around that goes away. The problem I have with this, though, is that that was probably a little too much blurring in there. So my edge is still really soft. I want my edge to be a little bit sharper. So you can actually grab the white point slider and start to pull it in towards the center as well. And you'll see it sharpens up your line. You don't want to over sharpen this. You don't want to make this thing look like you used the pen tool on it and didn't feather it. But I've pulled mine back in slightly. So if you want the same values that I've got, you actually did a blur of 3, and then you've got a black point of 177 and a white point of 238. If you don't say okay yet, just use your check mark on the preview to turn this on and off, and you can see this is actually what we've done. Now, how long did that take us to do that? It's on the entire body. Yeah. I've had people actually in tears at this stage of the game. No, because this issue, it haunts everybody who, how many people in this room, raise your hands really quickly, are planning on compositing for this class? This shit matters. This is what is going to either make or break your stuff. Well, it's part of it. All right, so at any rate, I like the way this looks, so I'm going to go ahead and say okay. But before you do anything else, because you have to do the history snapshot now, we're going to do another history snapshot. So go ahead and click on it. Again, I'm going to get mine to work the way yours is working because you don't get the naming dialog box to come up because it's broken. You'll still have another one called Snapshot 1 now because you renamed the first one pre-choke. You're going to double click on the next one and you're going to call it post-choke. And now I've got two states that I can work with using my history brush. One of the states is what this image looked like before I choked it, and another one, what it looks like after I choked it. So if you double click on the hand, we can kick back out. If you move into the hair, I can tell you right now that this did serious damage to this girl's hair. So it's hard to see it right now. Don't do this. I'm going to show you what mine looks like. Just take a look at my screen really quickly. This is what her hair looked like before. There was all this fine little part that was on the exterior right there. This is what it looks like now, and it's all that fineness now. This thing looks like it is cut out with a fucking X-Acto knife. So I can fix that though. I'm going to go back to where you guys are down here at the bottom. So what we can do is we can use our history states to restore this that has been damaged right here. So to do that, if you look at your history states, you'll notice that there are icons with names. We have choke and spread, which is our image when we opened it. We have pre-choke, which is what it looked like before we actually did this, and then post-choke, what it looks like after we did this. So you do not want to select these states. If you click on one of these states, it'll show you what the state looked like, but it will also get rid of all of your history, and this is not what we want. We want a mix of these two. So instead, I'm going to go all the way back down to the bottom again. Instead, what you're going to do is you'll notice that there is at the very top of the choke and spread, the very first one that got open, there is it looks like a paintbrush with a little circle with it's an arrow. It's meant to be a counterclockwise error. I've never been able to say this word. You know the thing that goes with a bow? Bow and that word. Yeah. Don't know why. If I get really drunk, you should hear me. I speak hardcore Southern when I get really drunk. I'm from the South, and so anything that has an I in it, like pie, becomes pie. Yeah, and era. Well, that word, the thing with the bow thing. What can I say? Anyway, back to this. So that's an indication of the state that your history brush will paint with. So for us, I want to return this hair to what it looked like before I choked it. So to do that, you click on the little box to the left of the icon that says pre-choke. Again, you do not select the pre-choke state. We didn't do anything here. We just said, okay, when you use the history brush, this is what we want to paint. What we're going to do is we're going to paint back to what the image looked like at this time. So to do that, I've just, again, selected the pre-choke state, the little icon. I put the little icon right next to the left of the icon of the history state. And then the history brush is right underneath the clone stamp tool. So the clone stamp tool, it's pretty much right in the middle. If you click on it, you'll get a drop-down menu, the lower or right-hand corner, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you'll have history brush or art history brush. You want to make sure that you pick history brush. And then up at the very top of your menu, you can actually make sure that this is a soft brush, that the blending mode is set to normal, 100% opacity and 100% flow. I actually am going to go to my tablet right now just because I'm more comfortable in doing it. But if you don't have your tablet or it's not out and ready, you don't need to worry about it too much. You'll get the same idea here. So mine is connected. I'm going to hover over my image. I need to make my brush much larger, so I'm using the bracket keys just to the left of my P key. And then I'm going to start down here close to her face. I don't want to actually hit this on her face because her face had part of that dark green line on it. But her hair didn't. And don't worry, I've got spill on her hair. I know that. I'm going to fix the spill in just a minute. But I'm going to click and I'm going to drag this back. And you can see now it is restoring not only spill, but it's restoring all of that fine hair that was actually sitting there. That's all stuff that I want. So I'm going to continue to work my way down here and keep all of that. And there you go. That part looks great. So then I'm just using my space bar, my hand on the space bar to get the hand so that I can actually move around the image and look to see what else is going on. Now I'm looking under her arm on the left-hand side. That's not that green line. That's actually spill. We will fix the spill later on. I'm working my way down. I'm working my way down further. And further still, the area right in between her crotch is spill, so you don't need to worry about that. I'm going to continue to work my way down to the shoes and to the boot. And now I just know this from experience. I think the bottom of her heel, the bottom of the shoe has actually been choked and I'm losing part of it. So to find out, I've still got my history brush. It's still set to paint this back to what it looked like pre-choke. I'm going to go along the very bottom. And you can see on the very bottom of her, I was on the very bottom of her heel. That actually didn't help me. I wasn't losing anything off the bottom. I'm actually, I've got I just brought that green line back on there. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. But I'm going to run this along the bottom of her shoe. And you can see along the bottom of her shoe, that did matter. I had lost part of the bottom of that shoe. I'm going to hit Command Z again so you guys can see this. If you're not seeing it on your screen, look at it on mine. I'm going to click and run this down. The whole bottom of that shoe, the choke actually killed that. So I don't want that to actually happen. So then I can continue to work around here like this. I'm going to continue to work my way up. But the thing to realize is this, is that let's say that you think that maybe there's a problem that on the top of the shoe you missed the choke, or the choke did too much damage. You can run this along the top of the shoe and you can see that in the middle part in here it actually brought part of it back. But let's say you don't want all of this back, you only want part of it back. I don't want to hit Command Z. Maybe I've already done this and Command Z doesn't work for me anymore. If you go to the top of your history palette and then put your brush on the, put the icon on the post choke state, now your brush will function and paint back what it looked like after the choke. So now I can bring this back in here and it will restore the choke. To see this in a better way, come all the way up to that shoulder again. And you can see in the shoulder, I'm going to again go back up to my pre-choke state. So I'm going to click the icon so it's on that pre-choke state. And I'm just going to run it right down her arm. And you can see that is now what it looked like before we choked it, pre-choke. If I then go back and change my history brush to post-choke state, I can paint it away again. So you can go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with this forever. But you can fine-tune it. So what I've got now is all of the image below, other than her hair and the very bottom of that shoe, has actually been, so the hair is pre-choke state, the bottom of the shoe is pre-choke state. I'm going to check the other shoe because I bet the bottom of the other shoe is also needs to be pre-choke state. So again, make sure that your history brush is set to the icon at pre-choke and paint in the bottom of this shoe. And again, I just brought back the bottom of that shoe. So the bottom of the shoes and her hair are both what this image looked like before I choked it, and everything else is after. Does this make sense, everyone? What's going on? Yes? No? So again, game changer. We're going to go ahead and finish this one out really quickly. I've got a smart object for mine. I can't do destructive work on a smart object. So I'm going to hit Command J on this to make a copy of my image because this bottom one is my virgin. I'm going to turn the eyeball of her off. The top one now, though, is a smart object. I can't remove the spill on a smart object. So I need to rasterize this top layer now. To do that, you come up to the layer menu, down to Smart Objects, down to Rasterize, or you come down to Rasterize Smart Object. You'll see that that little icon that's in the lower right-hand corner goes away, meaning that this is a normal layer right now. I'm going to go up to her hair. I'm going to hit the B key to get a normal brush. Use my bracket keys to make it a little bit larger brush. Check to make sure that this is a completely soft brush. I'm going to change my mode, my blending mode of the brush from normal down to color, 100% opacity, and 100% flow. Then I'm going to zoom in to her head. I'm going to hover over the color of her hair by her bangs, hold down the Option key and click to sample a color. That just made that dark brown my foreground color. And then I'm just going to start painting on just the spill. Again, don't hit the, don't come into the hair any further. You only want to fix the color that's bad. And you can see I'm going to resample again by holding down the Option key and click another color of brown, something darker, and then get rid of this spill on this part of her hair. And then again, resample on this edge and get rid of this spill. I'm going to sample a little bit darker color for the spill that's down here now. And I've now just removed the spill. There is still spill on other parts of her, specifically her gloves. So this one glove on the right-hand side doesn't have any, but the one on the left hand does. So I've got it right here. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. Hold down my Option key and sample that dark color and remove the spill right there. I've also got spill that's happening right in the center of her crotch, and that will get rid of that. As I work my way down, I don't have any on the rest of this, but I do have it on the boots. So on the edges of the boots, I'm just going to remove that spill. And on this side as well. Double click on the hand, and now we're talking. Is this working for everyone? Yes?
When I select a color, it puts the color into my background color instead of the foreground color, so I always have to like press X to switch it to paint with. Is there a way to like have that so it sets to the paint?
That should not be happening. So shoot me an email about that. I'll look into it. But if that keeps happening, I would reset my preferences for Photoshop. That sounds like it's like one of those things. So you're only holding the Option key, not...
So, yeah, I just press the Option key with the brush and it takes that select color to my background color. So then to paint with it, I have to press X.
Yeah. No, that's a pain in the ass. Yeah. That should... Who knows? It's probably a new feature. Are you on the latest version of Photoshop?
I'm using older version.
Okay. All right. All right, wait a second. I got to see this. Not that I don't believe you.
Like when I sample the color, I'll click X and then it'll go into the foreground. So then I have to click X to
Yeah, hit the D key first, just to default black and white. Okay, that's fine. And then hold down your Option key and then click on something in the mask. That's so bizarre. Send me an email about that. I'll see. It shouldn't be happening like that. Okay, final thing that we're going to do here, poison squirrels, since you're all interested in compositing. We're going to complete this a little bit more. We're going to throw in a quick set of... I take that back. We're not. We're going to move on to retouching. Any questions about this so far? Are we good? Okay, you can close this guy up. You don't need to save it unless you want. Okay, now into session number 6. And inside session number 6, there is a file inside your student folder, session number 6, called clonehealing1.psd. If you could double click on that one for me to open it up. It'll look like this. It's a synthetic file. It's basically got the left half of it is a solid middle gray, the right half of it is a gradient, and sitting above it, if you take a look at your layers, there's a layer that's got a partial circle on it. So did everybody find this file? Okay. Clone stamp tool and healing brush tool. What's the difference? Yeah, no, nobody knows the difference, and that's a problem. No, go for it.
The clone stamp paints with the selected part of the image you already have, whereas the healing brush doesn't do that.
Okay, maybe. Anyone else? Liz.
Is the healing tool more like it combines the two layers? Like it blends
Okay,
them?
yeah, see, this is the reason I always ask this is because nobody knows what the shit these things do, whatever. No, but this is important because using the right tool for the job, I mean, there's all sorts of idioms and cliches, all, use the right tool for the job, right? So we need to know what the right tool is. So we're going to start actually with the clone stamp tool. So to use it, hit the S key. That is the shortcut for the clone stamp tool. If you can't remember that, it's pretty much in the middle. Click on it, you'll get a flyout menu. There's 2 stamp tools in there. There's the clone stamp tool and the pattern stamp tool. We're going to start with the clone stamp tool, and I'm going to cover on to my image. You'll notice if I come over into my image right now, I can't do anything. You'll see that there's a warning. There's a circle with a slash through it. Why is that? What? I'm sorry? Yeah, because I'm basically, my layer number 2 is selected, but the eyeball is turned off, so you can't see it. If the eyeball was turned on, then you actually get the clone stamp tool. I'm going to turn the eyeball off, though. I want to actually do the cloning on the layer underneath it. So I'm going to pick the background layer, and now I can actually clone stamp on it. So I'm going to make my clone stamp tool a little bit larger. about the size of a nickel or a dime, somewhere in there. And the way this tool works is that you set the source point first and then you do the destination second. So basically, the destination that needs to be fixed, you select the source point of what you want to use to fix the problem destination. So I'm going to hover over the very sort of kind of the top right-hand corner of my gradient. So on the right-hand side, hold down the Option key. Actually, really quick before you do that, make sure that you have a completely hard clone stamp tool. It's just easier to see. So again, click on the brush down, drop down menu, hardness, complete 100% hardness. Again, I'm going to come up to that top corner right now, and I'm going to click. Hang on, that's how yours should be. I'm going to hold down my Option key, click once. That sets the source point, and then when I come over to my other side to the middle gray, it's actually giving me a preview of what it's going to do, and I'm going to simply click and drag and go all the way down. And it should get a perfect replacement. So what I've done is I've said, okay, with the clone stamp tool, I want to entirely replace the pixels in my destination with those in my source. Did this work for everyone? Did it not work for anyone? Okay.
'Reset your source again. Oh, there it goes. Okay, I don't need it. You guys are just fucking with me. You want to see me run.
Okay, so now I am going to go to the other side. I want to space in between these two. So I'm going to start up at the very top again. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag down again. And you will notice that again, it starts at the very top and it comes back down. And then I'm going to do the stuff right in the very middle. And you can see that if I do this long enough, it's going to exactly replace the thing that I started with. Is that working for everyone? Okay, so there's advantages to that, but there's disadvantages to that as well. So I'm going to hit Command Option, for me anyway, Command Option Z to go back once, twice, 3 times, just to start over. You could also go up to just the very top of the your history palette and click on the open state, and it'll actually bring you back to where we are right now. So the next thing I want to do, though, is I don't want this to be aligned. I don't want that perfect alignment part. There's reasons that we do not always want to go back and have it function like that. So that's where this aligned check mark is. So if you click on this aligned check mark and undo it, uncheck it, then we're going to do the same thing again. I'm going to start in that top right-hand corner. I'm going to hold down the Option key to set that as my source point. I'm going to come over to the side, and I'm going to click and drag down, and it looks just like it did before. But now, and actually here, I'm going to undo that really fast. I'm going to click and do it again, but when I click here, look what happens. I get another little X that's showing me where my source point is in the gradient side. Now, that's just for reference. It's just showing me that, okay, this is where we're starting it from. And I'm going to click and start and drag my whole thing down, and it looks just like you did before. But now when I let go or let go of your mouse, lift your cursor, your stylus off of your track tab, I want you to start in the very middle and click and look again. That little X for my source point is all the way back up where it started, but now I'm not in alignment anymore. And now when I click and drag down, it starts from that point up at the very top. I can even do it at the very bottom. I'm going to click again down at the very bottom, and that source point is sitting right up there at the top. And the reason this is of value to you is that a lot of times when you are doing clone stamp work, you want it to be in alignment. Let's say you're trying to take a line out of something. You want it to actually be in alignment, but there are other times, for instance, skin, where you can actually have a piece of skin on somebody's face that is perfect. It's absolutely perfect. You can set that as your source point, and then you can go all over that face and without having to reset your point every single time to paint that perfect skin anywhere else on that face. Does that make sense? All right, so there's times we use this. Not a lot, but there are times that we use this. But that's the clone stamp tool. So again, it is a replacement, pixel by pixel replacement. Are we good on this part? Okay. There's a problem though with the clone stamp tool. I'm going to go all the way back in time. So Command Option Z 1, 2, 3 to get me back in time. I am going to do that same, again, I'm going to go back up to my same upper right hand corner, hold down the Option key and click to set that as my source point. But now I want to make my brush completely soft. So I'm going to click on my drop down menu, make my brush completely soft, 0% hardness. And now I'm going to actually come over onto my image and I'm just going to click a dot once and then drag down. And then I want to zoom into this. And what you'll see that's happening here is you've got the perfect clone stamp in the middle. You've got nothing changed way on the outside. Sorry. But you've got this transition area. And what's happening in this transition area, so get rid of that clone. What's happening in this transition area is I am mixing old with new. Does that make sense, everyone? So I've been thinking about this to try to figure this out, and we're going to look at this in a slightly different way. So I need everybody to create another synthetic file now, just Command N. To bring up, and it's sticky. You should still have your 8 by 10 and 300 ppi in there. So I'm just going to open this image up. It's a blank image. If you still have your guidelines showing, you can actually click on the, the ruler showing. You can click on the left-hand ruler, and as you drag out into the middle, as you get close to the middle, it'll actually snap to the middle as well. So again, it's just the behavior of these guidelines. It doesn't mean you can't continue to move it over, but this is now divided my image in half. Then I'm going to hit the M key to get my marquee tool, or just select the marquee tool again, second tool from the top down. I want to make this one half of my marquee tool, I want to make it blue, and I want to make the other half of it, do I want to do blue? Yeah, blue and yellow. Pick two complementary colors, anyone? Violet and yellow, not complementary colors. That's okay. No, I'm going to do cyan and red. That I think will give me the best mix of this. So we're going to do cyan and red. Okay, so I want to select the left half of this. Simply click anywhere in the left-hand part, click and drag out. Before you let go, hold down your space bar, jam the upper left-hand corner into the upper left-hand corner. Your marquee tool will start to collapse. That lets you know that it's completely socked, that it's really located all the way up into that very corner. Let go of your space bar and just complete the selection by bringing it down. And then I'm going to click on my foreground color, and I said I wanted to do cyan and red. So I'm going to pick red in my radio buttons for, again, my foreground color picker. 255 for the red. Hit the tab key to go to 0 green, tab key to go to 0 blue. It's now giving me a pure red, and I'm going to say OK to that. And then to, again, fill my selection with a foreground color, you simply hold down Option Delete, and it's now red. I've still got the marching ants going for me, which is great, because now I'm going to flip it to the other side. The easiest way to do that is just to invert your selection. So go up to the Select menu and come down to Inverse, and now the marching ants are on the other side. And I'm going to change this to being cyan. So I'm going to click on the red. I'm going to click on the foreground color to bring up the color picker. And in this case now, I'm going to put in 0 red, tab key 255 green, tab key 255 blue, and that gives me cyan. And I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to say, OK, I'm going to fill this now with that cyan color. So again, Option Delete, Command D to deselect. So now I've got opposing colors. Make sense? I'm going to now clone stamp one onto the other. So if I hit the S key again, shortcut for it. In this case, I want to go back to my perfectly hard brush. And I'm going to go up here in the top left-hand corner, hold down the Shift Option key to sample this color. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click and drag down. And it does a great job of it. It just replaces the pixels in this red with the pixels that were in the cyan. That part is great. But now I'm going to show you the problem that everybody doesn't acknowledge in the clone stamp tool. If you change this brush to a completely soft brush, and then again, I'm going to come over to that side. I'm going to, oops. I'm going to come over to this upper right-hand edge of the cyan. Hold down my Option key to select that again. And this time I'm going to go kind of all the way to the left-hand side of the red. And I'm going to click and drag this down. And then I want you to zoom in to see what's happening. And you can see that on the edges of this, I've actually turned this into a gray. Because what's happening is that as I start to reduce the opacity of my brush on that edge to make it soft, that old red starts coming through. I don't have this perfect mix like I do here on this side. Here, there's no edge on this, but this, as you transition out, son of a... As you transition out here, these two are mixing. Some of you guys did this same thing when you were trying to replace the hair of the of Sunny when we were actually trying to create that new version. You put a layer mask on there, and then you did really light painting, and you were mixing old texture of hair with new texture of the hair. That does not work in life, and it's even worse in skin. Absolute worst thing you can do. You're mixing old texture with new texture to try to get this to blend in. Does that make sense what's going on here? Who did I lose on this one?
I just had a quick question about the brush. I'm just wondering why my brush is kind of clumpy when I draw the line, and instead of it being a smooth edge. Like, I'm not sure if I have the wrong brush here, but it kind of is like lumpy.
Oh yeah, that's just, all that does is that you can fix that. Come up to your window menu, down to brush settings. And it's spacing right here. Your spacing is actually set right. I would leave that as it is right now.
Okay.
This will change how lumpy that side is. Again, it's digital. Smoothness is an illusion. Okay, you can close this up, but that is basically, you don't need to save it, but that's basically in a nutshell the struggle that we actually have is that in order to get a clone stamp tool to blend in and to have the new pixels blend into the old, you inevitably have to set it at something other than 100%. If you set it at 100% hardness, you see the line. But if you set it at 0, which is what everyone does to actually get it to blend in more, you start mixing in the old texture. The old texture is still a part of that image. And it starts to mix in, and the two textures are mixing together. And where that happens, you destroy the texture that is in that area. So everybody like sort of thinks it's working, but it isn't. Are we good on this part? Okay, so I'm going to double click on the hand to kick back out. We are now going to go back in history again to open to get rid of that part. So that is a clone stamp tool, pixel to pixel replacement. But now we're going to actually go to the healing brush tool. So to get to the healing brush tool, again, it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th tool down. Mine looks like a Band-Aid right now with some stars next to it. It shows you what the last tool is that you had selected. By default, this is now, I think the one that they select is the remove tool. We will look at that guy later. It's not really a healing brush thing as much as it is more like a content-aware removal tool. But at any rate, I want to go down to the healing brush tool. It's in the group set here. It's the third one down. There's a spot healing tool at the top, remove tool. Healing brush tool is the one that I want you to pick right now. So when we select that, I'm again going to make my brush larger. And then again, check to make sure that this is a completely hard brush. So I'm going to reset my hardness all the way up. I'm going to leave it as a normal blending mode. The source I'm going to leave as sampled. I am going to leave this one as aligned. I'm not going to use the legacy. Again, yet another tool that Photoshop has to use legacy because so many people in the community bitched about it that they finally had to do something to let people work with the way they'd work with the tool for 35 years. Thank you, Adobe. May you all burn in hell. No, anyway. So I'm going to do the same thing again. So I'm going to come over to the gradient tool, the top right hand corner, hold down the Option key and click. This will set my source, and then when I come over to my to the gray side, you can see it's giving me a preview of what's going to happen, but now I'm going to click and drag down and let go, and absolutely nothing changed. So clearly it is a different tool than the clone stamp tool. So what you need to think about with the healing brush tool is this. The brush has actually 2 steps to it. The first step is that it takes the source texture and it replaces the destination with the source texture. Now in this case it's a synthetic image, so there is no texture, so that's why nothing has changed here. The texture on the left is the same as the one on the right. Nothing has changed. But then what the tool does is, so the first one is replace the texture, but then what it does is it looks at the tone and the color around that new replacement, and it says we need to blend this in to the new replacement. And so what's happening is that, so again, I'm going to do it again. I'm clicking and dragging down. It's saying, okay, I'm going to replace the texture, but the texture is the same, so nothing gets replaced. But then I'm going to look at the area around it. The area around it is gray, and it's saying, okay, I am going to now take that gray and try to make my new texture the same color or tone as the gray that is surrounding it to blend it in. Does that make sense? And that's why you see nothing change. Actually, things did change. It replaced the texture with the very same, but then it blended the color around it, which is gray. So we can do it in the opposite direction. Hover over the center of your gray patch now and hold down the Option key and set that as a sample. Bring it over here and click and drag down, and you'll see the exact same thing happens. As we are going down, it's looking at those edges of that gradient and trying to blend that color actually in. You actually see there's a small little anomaly that's happening right in here. You can sort of spot it barely, but that would be nothing that I would count on being able to leverage. So this is how the clone stamp tool works. It's very different than the healing brush. Are we good on this part? Okay, a couple other tools to look at really fast in that same healing group. The first one is the spot healing group, and if you actually grab the spot healing brush tool, bring it over to your image. Again, I'm going to use my bracket keys to make it considerably larger so that we can see it. I'm going to come up and hold down my Option key. I'm up again on the top left-hand, top right-hand corner, holding down my Option key. Click to set it, and you'll get this warning dialog box that opens up. It'll say that the spot healing brush tool automatically samples pixels for you, you idiot. That's not really what it says. That's what this tool does, is that it actually lets Photoshop pick your source point for you. When this tool works, it works really well. It'll actually work faster because you don't have to pick a source point. But a lot of times it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, you've got to go back to using the normal healing brush tool, not the spot healing brush tool. One of the advantages of the spot one, though, here, nobody ever used to use this at all until they added content aware to it. When they added content aware to this, it became something really viable, something that people actually really could use. And we'll take a look at it. The sample that we work on today will actually involve this part. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And then finally, the last tool in this is, so in that same group and drop down, is the patch tool. So the patch tool works in a very different way. With the patch tool, it functions the same way. It's a 2-step process. It's going to replace texture, and then it's going to try to blend in the color and tone surrounding that new texture. But with this one, you actually select the problem first. So you select what would be the destination, and then you drag that selection to the source. So basically the way it works is you just, it's a lasso tool, just dragging the lasso tool out onto any part of it, because nothing's going to change. Again, it's still doing the same thing that the healing brush and the brush tool does. So, but I've got a selection going in the middle of my gradient. You'll notice if you then put your cursor in the middle of that, you get, it looks like a set of marching ants that are supposed to look like a patch. And then it's got arrows that point to either side. You click and you drag this to, again, to a source point that you would want to use to replace that, and then let go. But again, in our case, because we are doing exactly what the tool should do, we don't see any difference. Make sense? Yes?
Mine has a symbol in the middle.
Oh, never mind. Okay. Command D to deselect. One last thing I want to show you really quickly. There are times where it becomes really imperative that you can see, right now, I'm going to go back to the clone stamp tool. So just hit the S key to get the clone stamp tool. Come up to the very top, hold down your Option key and click to set the source point. Come over to the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and make my brush completely hard again. And then what you'll see, let's actually do it right on the very edge. What we'll do it right on the edge right here. You can see that there's a spot that's in the very middle of this healing brush that'll allow you to align things. But my problem is that I've got now a black spot. I can't see through this. I can't see what's underneath it. So you can change that. To change this, you come up to the window menu and you want to come down to clone source. And a dialog, it'll add another working pane here on your window, right? It's another window, it's another palette. Will actually come up. You can see it's shooting out to the side. So this is the clone source where you can actually change the behavior of how a lot of this works. So the first thing you can do is actually uncheck show opacity. And then when you bring your brush out over this thing, you'll see that it's not giving you a preview at all, but it's still there. If you click and drag down, it still is going to do that. Command Z to undo that. If you want to see a bit of both, you can actually turn show overlay back on, but then simply reduce your opacity down to 50% or so, and then you'll get a half and half. You'll be able to see, okay, yeah, that's where I'm going to go. But then again, when you click and drag down, it'll give you the full 100% opacity. Does that part make sense? Okay, here's the best. I'm going to undo that part right now. You'll notice up at the very top, you have what are called clone sources. We have selected source number 1, and it's the upper right-hand corner of this gradient. However, if I click on, I'm going to do another brand new image here really quickly. So just again, Command N to bring up the new dialog box and say OK to that. And now come over to your image here. I'm going to drag my opacity back up again, and then just paint. What you'll see is that you can clone from image to image. That source number 1 has remembered where it was set to begin with. If you click on source number 2 now, so again, the little, looks like, I always think they look like little stamps. They always look like little men to me, little heads. If you click on source number 2, we can do a new source point. So I'm going to click, I'm going to set a source point in this white. Option, click, it sets a source point. Now I can come back into my other image and I can click and drag down, and you'll see that I'm now using source point number 2, which was from the white image. But I can click back on my source point number 1, and that goes back to the original gradient that I had in number 1. So you have up to 5 source points that you can actually pick for this. So I'm going to go back to my number 1 source point. I'm going to turn on my, circle. And is there a way that you could then actually clone this circle to fill in the missing part? Well, let's try. I'm going to hover over the circle part at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, around that area. If you imagine this is a clock face, I'm going to hold down my Option key and I'm going to click to set that as my source point. I'm going to come down to the bottom and click and drag out, and this is actually doing it on my, I didn't select my top layer, I just turned the eyeball on. So Command Z to undo that. Go back up to the top, make sure that it is active layer. Again, I'm going to reset my source point at the very top, so hold down the Option key, click at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then come down, and then if I click and do this, and you'll see, oh, that's not going to work. Does that make sense? Okay, you can change the angle of your cloning. Hit Command Z to undo that. The angle is sitting right here underneath this. You can change this angle to 180, which will be just the opposite. Again, a circle is 360 degrees, so 180 would just be the opposite of that, and go ahead and hit Enter for that. And now I'm going to come over here, and you can see that my preview is actually showing it the other way. I know. The problem is, though, that when I go to try to paint this in, I can't tell whether I've got this lined up correctly, because I don't know where this should actually start or end here in the middle part here. So to actually get this to work, you need to make your brush much larger, and then you'll see how it lines up. So I'm just going to make my brush larger, and then I can start to bring this over, and I'm going to continue to make my brush larger. And then you can see at a point where it'll actually begin to line up as you start to move it, oh, son of a bitch, as you start to move it up and down and right and left and click. And that's how you complete it. You hate your roommate because this is sticky. You hate your roommate. go in, open up the clone stamp, the clone source thing, and change their clone stamping tool to 180 and just close it up then, and every single thing that they do from now on is going to be flipped, and it will drive them insane. They will end up resetting their preferences to undo it because they will have no idea what you know. Yeah, doesn't that sound happy and nice? Okay, so this is basically the tool set that we're going to work with, and then we're going to get into how many people got into this class to learn how to retouch, skin, and get paid $25,000 to actually do a job, and they give you 2 weeks to actually do it. How many people want to do that kind of skin? Yeah. I can say I can understand the desire. Be careful what you ask for. We're going to start that. So I'm going to call this 347. 347, if you could be back, hard 10. 357, we're going to get into doing the retouching that a lot of people hope they would learn how to do. Okay, back to how you charge. So the 5 images, right? And I'm sitting there saying, so in your mind, you say to yourself, well, how long is this really going to take me to do this? And so maybe you say to yourself, okay, 15 minutes an image, right? 5 images, it's a little over an hour. But so I'm going to round it up. I'm not going to ever quote somebody 20 bucks for something. What are you worth an hour? So a typical person, $200 a day, that's what an assistant would get. That's 50 bucks an hour. Nope, that's 25 bucks an hour, right? So 2 hours, I'll charge you 50 bucks, $10 an image, right? And I say, okay, that sounds great. I'm into this. This actually works. But then let's say you can go into Photoshop and you can bang all 5 of them out in 10 minutes. Well, I'm still going to get the 50 bucks, right? I'm not going to give you a discount on that. I'm not going to come back and say, oh, well, I did it in 10 minutes. It only took me 10 minutes to do it. And that's the kind of retouching that you would probably do. I mean, for me, I'll be honest with you, full-length fashion, go in there, healing brush tool, whack, 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 done, off to the next, right? But if I can do it, if I'm getting $50 for 10 minutes, that's $300 an hour. Do you want to make 50 bucks an hour, or do you want to make $300 an hour? Exactly, right? Simple math, right? So you never quote based on time. You always quote based on how long you think it's going to take you, and then you always hope that you can do it in a quarter of the time that you quoted, right? But you never quote them, or it's always by the project. Those 5 images, 50 bucks. Or those 5 images, 100 bucks. Even better, if you can do 100 bucks and you can do it in 10 minutes, you're making $600 an hour. Then you're making real money. Make sense? All right, so anyway, back to what I was showing you before. This work form in session 6. You need to spell this shit out. Exactly what you have agreed to do. So everything about it, this covers you about, is this image copyrighted? A lot of people will not work on images that are not copyrighted because then you run into a problem of, do you get sued for the copyright part, or does the photographer who's stealing the work get sued? All of this. But this part then becomes, it's a checklist for you as well. Are you correcting the exposure? Are you doing color contrast correction? Are you doing all of that? Then it spells it out. So if whatever you guys agree to, you see where it says here, the client request and the client approval, all of this is a checklist. Well, okay, yeah, I said I was going to fix her nose and her forehead and her cheeks, but I didn't say anything about her neck. You didn't okay that. So if you want me to fix her neck, it's going to be more money. Because inevitably they are going to come back to you and say, well, you promised me more than you delivered. And they're just trying to cheat you out of this money. So you have all of this spelled out ahead of time. And so when they say to you, well, you said you were going to clean up the hairline, and I'll say, well, no, I didn't. It's sitting right here. We made no mention or conversation about that at all. I'm happy to clean up the hairline for you, but it's going to be more money. My job is to give you guys some kind of future. I don't want to see any of you at Starbucks unless you're buying coffee, and then I'll just question your taste in coffee. All right, there's a question about this. So again, this is not the only one. You could actually expand on this and whatever, but this gives you a beginning and some way to begin to think about doing that kind of work, right? And when you are hiring retouching, you should be doing this exact same thing so that you don't have a retoucher flipping it on you. And a retoucher said, oh, sure, I'll take care of all the skin, not a problem. And then come back and say, well, you didn't say anything about the hairline. And again, it cuts both ways. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Are we good on this part? Okay. So, yes.
I was just gonna ask, pertaining to that, so to always have it signed before you start working on it?
Always.
And what about, have you come across situations where clients refuse to sign it?
Then you don't work for them. So there's one other thing you need to look at really quickly here. No, that's actually the part that I wanted to. This beauty retouching checklist. This is another version of it, but this is more of a how you begin to think about not just doing retouching, but here, the big picture is the image color balance, blah, blah, blah. The details, look at it and go through it all. Get it in writing. Have a discussion with the client. Get it in writing. And if you can, get money up front. Why on earth everybody is willing to wait 30 days to get paid is beyond me. If I go into a store and say, oh yeah, I love that suit, I'm gonna take it now, they don't look at me and say, well, yeah, and send us a check in a month. We'll be fine. You pay for it, you give them a credit card right then, right? Why don't you work like that? Who are you loaning money to, carrying it? Anyway, blah, blah, don't get me started. Okay, so the image I want to start with, again, it's part of your homework, so you might as well, actually, we're going to start with this, and it's in the assignment folder. I'm going to tell you really quickly, though, if you get lost in this process, there's a PDF file down here called Tonal Retouching version 3. A lot of everything that we do, the setup for everything that we do is going to be explained in this thing. So if you can't watch the video or you can't remember this, whatever, this is just a reference for you to go back to and say, oh yeah, that's how I set my foreground colors and background colors. So just so you know it's there. In the assignment folder, there is an assignment. Again, there's the PDF that lists the assignment. There's this folder called Skin as Retouch. I need you to open that. So this is what we're going to actually try and fix. So again, if we go back to that whole issue about what shows dimension, what shows texture, it is shadows and highlights. So I need everybody to zip into the pimple that's right in the middle of that girl's chin. So how do I get rid of this non-destructively? So the problem is that most of you would whack this out using a healing brush tool or the clone stamp tool right away. But again, as we've already said, in doing that, at the very best with a healing brush tool, this is not necessarily a texture thing, so what we'll end up doing is just changing the color part of it. That might be an option, but most people would go after this with the clone stamp tool. And when you do that, the only way to not have it be obvious is to use a soft brush, and when you use a soft brush, every one of those edges starts mixing old texture, the original skin, with the new texture that you're replacing it with, and you can get away with that in a 1 or 2 spots, but if you do that all over somebody's face, eventually it is going to catch up to you, and it's going to look plastic. You know those plastic pictures that you see in Sephora and in the Walgreens? I can't believe I'm putting those in the same category, but the ads are all exactly the same. It's plastic fake skin. If you turn in plastic fake skin in this class, I'm going to spank you. Our goal in this is to keep skin real, and skin has texture, and so if you lose that or you somehow pervert it, you lose. All right, so that's not what we're going to do. So the way we're actually going to attack this, there's a bunch of problems on this, and we're going to attack them in different ways, but this I'm going to show you. So I gave you the example before. I've got 5 images full-length fashion, and I'll give you an hour to retouch them. That was one. So that's one sort of extreme. And again, I said flat out, I would just go in the healing brush tool, whack the shit out of that, and I wouldn't really care about it because you can't really tell. It's going to be full-length fashion in a magazine. You'll never see whether the texture in the skin's gone or not. But that's very, very different than if Lancome calls you and says, I'm shooting Rachel Weisz, and I need you to retouch this, and I will give you $25,000 to do it in a 2-week timeline. In that case, you're going to be a whole lot more particular about your retouching, wouldn't you think? Likely, or certainly what they're going to expect. Again, it's just really gigantic face. All it is face, and everything is going to be evident. So you can't go in there with a healing brush and just whack the shit out of that like you could the first one. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the retouching that you do has to be based on its intent. So I'm starting with the most difficult part of it is this, and this is the $20,000, $25,000 Rachel Weisz retouch for Lancome. That is how we're going to retouch this image. It is going to take you hours to do this. It's the nature of the game. If it takes you 8 hours, but I was really going to offer you 25 grand in 2 weeks to do it, that wouldn't seem too bad. You're a student, what can I tell you? So sad, too bad, so sad, something like that. All right, so this is how we're going to do it. There again, we're going to touch on several different strategies for several different issues on this, but the main one that we're going to deal with here is tonal retouching. So to start this whole process out, the very first thing you do, regardless of whether you are going to retouch this down and dirty quick or really high end, you click on this and you make a copy of this background layer. So the first thing, click on it, hit Command J to make a copy of it, and rename that Pixel Retouch. Once we get into this whole process a lot of people will actually set an action up to build these things because you do it the same way every single time. So Pixel Retouch is the first one. We're going to add another layer on top of this right now. To do that, you hover over the little icon that's the square with the plus in the middle of it at the bottom of your layers palette. But before you click on it, because if you just click on it, it's going to make a brand new layer, and then you have to individually go in and do these settings. We don't want to do that. We want to be able to set this up pretty much in one stroke, as it were. So instead, hold down your Option key and then click on that. A dialog box will open up where you can name the layer, and we are going to name this layer Tonal Retouch Small.
You said option one.
Option, and then just click on that very same thing, this very same icon at the bottom.
Okay.
Did that work? Okay, Tonal Retouch Small. And then before you say OK, you're going to change the blending mode of this from normal down to soft light. And then you're going to click on this check mark right here where it says fill soft light with neutral color. And you're going to say OK to that. Now, we're going to do this again. You have an option. You can either do the same exact thing we just did again, and we're going to use a slightly different name, or you could just copy this layer. I'm just going to copy the layer, Command J. And then double click on the name, and you're going to change the small son of a bitch. Anyway, you want Tonal Retouch Large. Tonalretouch. Okay. You're going to turn Tonal Retouch. You're going to turn Tonal Retouch Large off and click on Tonal Retouch Small. This is where we're going to actually start to work. So what we're talking about here when we talk about small and large is that there are, if I double click on my hand and kick back out, there's really large areas. If you can see, like there's this whole shadow area that's right underneath her cheek right here. We're going to fix that tonally, but that's a large area. The pimple on her face is a much smaller area. You want to keep these two separate. So you'll see what I mean because we're going to get into both of those areas. The other thing that you, yes?
How did you turn the boxes green?
How did I do what?
How did you turn the layers green?
You click on the fill with neutral gray, 50% gray.
Like when you first open it?
Yeah, here. So throw this away. Throw that one away. Hold down the Option key and click on that guy. Good. Name it Tonal Retouch Small. Click on the drop-down menu. Change the blending mode to soft light. And then click on that check mark. Nope. Check mark that says fill with soft light, and then say OK. Duplicate that and change the word small copy to large. Okay, so the way that tonal retouching works, so the way that soft light layers work is they work as a dodge and a burn layer. That's basically all they do. Hit the D key to make sure that your foreground and background colors are defaulted to black and white, and then we're going to zoom into this area. But before I zoom into this area, I want to tell you something here right now. Right now, I've got the image that's relatively small. I'm going to make it just a little bit larger right there. This is an easy way to really see what I'm doing right here, to see the overall effect of it. But this is impossible to do really precise work at this scale. So I want to have a place where I can retouch this and see in really, really, really close, but also have the pulled back view to see the whole overall thing. So to do that, we need a second window of this. We don't want to make a copy of this file. We need a second viewing window of the same one file. Because if we make a copy of this file, we'll only be retouching the copy. We won't be retouching this. So I need it to be a single file, but two different views. So to get to the second view, come up to your window menu, down to Arrange, and then down to New Window for Skin Eyes Retouch. So take a look at my screen to see where I'm at. So again, Window, Arrange, New Window for this, and it'll pop open a new window, and this window right here is exactly the same file as before, but this one I can actually zoom in considerably on. So what I'm really going to do is move her over here a little bit, and then I'm going to zoom in. And I can work at this. I'm at about 300% to work on this, and I can just kick this to the side a little bit right here. So I've got two views of this, and I can see them at the same time. This is where I'm going to do my work. If you're working up on a big monitor, it actually makes this a whole lot easier than working on this little bitty ass laptop, but there you go. All right, so make sure that you have your tablet. You have to use your tablet for this. This is why I told you guys in class number 1, you could not do retouching without a tablet. You cannot do the work that we are going to do right now without a tablet. So bring your tablet on. I am going to hit the B key to get a brush. I'm going to slide this down a little bit so I can get to my options. You want to make sure that your brush is completely soft, so 0% hardness, and that it is a normal blending mode. 100% opacity and 100% flow right now, just to show you what it is. How these tools ultimately work. So I'm going to work on the big version that I've got right here. Make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm just, black is my foreground color. I'm just going to click and drag across, and you can see it makes my image darker. Did this work for everyone? Then I'm going to hit the X key to go to white, and I'm going to do another mark, and I'm going to bring that down, and you can see it makes my image lighter. And you can also see that the exact same thing is happening on the more away image. So I've got two views of this, but that's basically what's going on in here. The problem that we have with this, though, is that the soft light layer does not just use tone. It doesn't just make things lighter and darker. It also colors things. And so if you use black and white to do this, what you are doing is you can make the area that we're trying to make lighter and darker, but you're also going to make it less saturated. You're going to make it gray because you are painting with black and white. We can't do that. What we need to do is we need to make a skin color that is extremely light and a skin color that's extremely dark, and paint with those colors so that when we change the tone, we do not change the color as well. If you were to use black and white over this whole image, eventually things would start to gray out. And you eliminate the highlights and the shadows, but you end up with these gray marks on her skin, and that's just not acceptable. So Command Option Z to get one of those marks away, Command Option Z to get the second one away. So instead, we are going to make, again, a burning and dodging color for her skin. So I'm going to click on the foreground color. Doesn't matter which one we make first. I'm going to make the burning color first. The dodging color first. So I'm just going to click on her skin. So when you're picking a spot for her skin, you want to avoid places like, you don't want deep shadows, you don't want burnt out highlights, you don't want spectral highlights, you don't want any place where there's really obvious makeup. So you would not pick a place that had a lot of rouge on it, you would not pick her lip color. So I'm just going to click on a spot right here on her chin, and it'll give me a color. So in my case, it's giving me a hue of 22. You should be close to that. Somewhere between 21, 22, 23, somewhere in that. You should be pretty close to that. However, this is now, you can see the preview color right here. It's way too dark. I need, again, something extremely light. So I'm going to click on the B button for brightness. That will mean the column that's sitting there is now brightness. And I'm going to drag the two little arrows up. See, I've almost got that word there, right? Okay, I'm going to drag this up till it gets into the mid to low 90s, so around a 94%. It's considerably lighter. However, it's still got a very intense color in here. So I need to reduce the saturation as well. So I'm going to click on saturation and I'm going to pull the saturation down. But you do not want to go all the way down. If you go all the way down, this becomes a gray. And again, you've just gone back to that same problem. You're painting with something that has no color. So I bring typically my saturation down to somewhere in the low teens. So I'm at a 12. That is a really good, very light color that's based on her skin color. So I'm going to say okay to that. Now I'm going to make my burning color, the one in the back. So I'm going to click on the background color swatch. It will open up the background color picker. And in this case, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to tap right on her chin to get her skin color. So you see it put in a hue of 23. I'm going to then click on my brightness slider here. The column becomes your brightness slider. You want to pull this down, but again, you don't want to go all the way down or you end up with black and you're back again to that same problem. So when I pull mine down, I keep it pretty dark though. So I'm down around, again, the mid-teens, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. It gives me enough darkness in here. I'm going to click on my saturation slider though, and this one you can actually bump up a little bit. Because this color is so dark, we need to put a little bit of more saturation back into it. So my saturation is going to be somewhere in the mid-40s, something like that. This looks good to me, so this is where I'm going to start on this. So I've got these colors are now correct, my dodging and burning color, and when I actually am doing this work, I just keep my finger on the X key. On my left hand, the finger's on the X key. Oh, by the way, is anybody in here left-handed? Because you can set your tablet up to flip sides. So if you're left-handed, you can actually set a Wacom tablet up to be left-handed, not like it is right now. But anyway, no one's here's got that problem, no big deal. So I'm going to make sure now that my brush is completely soft brushed to do this work. And we are going to start with opacity. Once you get really good at this, a lot of people will flip this to flow. But for our purposes right now, I want everyone to start with opacity. For a skin that is this tone, we are going to start with an opacity of 6%. So if you hover over the opacity slider in the options bar at the very top, you'll get the scrubby slider. I want you to drag it down to 6%. Now there's areas of her skin that are so light, we will probably get down under that. We'll probably be in the 1 or 2% range. This is a very, 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 very build it up slowly kind of process. So this is how we're going to have our whole brush set up right now, and this is how you'll continue to work on this. So then I'm going to come over to the larger area of this, and I'm going to make my brush smaller, because I'm going to start out with, actually I'm going to start, instead of dodging this, I'm actually going to burn in the very center of that pimple. So I'm going to hit the X key to get my foreground and background colors to swap, and they won't swap. Well, that's annoying. So my X key is not working right now. Oh, it's because my opacity is still looking for me to enter that value. Hit the enter key, your return key, whatever, and then your X key will work. So I'm gonna burn down the center of this pimple. So I've got my brush about the size of the pimple, and here's the trick. So you won't see this on the video, but you will certainly hear me preach about this. Everybody wants to go in and paint this shit. You cannot paint this stuff. If you look at the texture of her skin, or even think about pixels, it's dots. So the way this thing works, I'm going to turn mine upside down because I don't want to do this all. I don't want to actually do this right now. But this is what you do: dot 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 dot. It never is anything but that. It's never click and stroke. It's never paint in one area in little circles. It's never any of that. It's dots. It's nothing but dots. And believe me, I can spot the painted shit a mile away, so you don't pay attention to this and you turn in something that's all painted, I will not be happy. So watch me how I do this, and then I'm gonna get everyone to do this with me. So I'm starting in the center, the little light area right there, dot, 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 dot. I'm close, stop. Hit the X key to go to the dodging tool and start to dot your way around the exterior of this, the part of this that you're trying to lighten up. And my tablet does not like all of the video resources. Refer back down to the smaller image. I can still see that there's areas that are not completely done. I'm going to hit the X key again to make my burning color, and I'm going to hit just in the center a little bit. And now I've got an overall much larger area that is all tonally still a little bit too dark. So a little bit bigger brush right now, and then dot, 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 oops. And you realize that you're burning this instead of dodging it. X key, and then dot, 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 a little bit smaller. Dot, 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 smaller still. Referring back, it's too light now. You can see the lightness on my pulled back image version of it. X key to burn back in. Go a little bit lighter. And in the center a little bit more. And again, X key a little bit lighter here. And there you go. Pimple's gone. If I pull this over and then turn on and off my small retouching layer, you can see that this thing is completely gone. I didn't touch the texture. I did that all tonally. So I need everybody to remove this pimple. If you want to see what you did, hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball for the tonal layer by itself, and you'll see this is what it is. So you can also see I've got all of these other marks around mine that should not be there. I'll show you how to fix those in just a second. My tablet is going really wonky because I've got this video going, I've got the recording of this going, and I've got a browser that's open, and God knows what else. So my tablet is being very, very crazy on me right now. But there's a way to fix this. I'll show you what it is in just a second. And if you don't feel like you're doing anything, just periodically go over and turn the eyeball for your tonal retouch small layer on and off again, and you'll see what you get. Is it working? Okay, if you've got this done, great. If you don't have it done, save your work, because again, this is going to be your homework. So anything that we do on this, you might as well save this and use it so you don't have to do it all over again. So for me, I am going to save it up to my file menu down to Save As, and I'm going to put mine in my TOS folder. You should put yours wherever you put your homework. Say OK. So then I'm going to show you how I need to fix that part. So look at my screen here really quickly. You can see that again, I'm going to hold down my Option key and click on this. So the thing about a soft light layer, what it does is it actually, anywhere where it is 50% gray is nothing happens at all. It's completely neutral. So that's why we filled this with 50% gray. But we don't need to keep it as 50. So we filled it with 50% gray. And then anywhere on the image where it's lighter, the image becomes lighter. And when anywhere on this layer where it's darker than 50% gray, it becomes darker. But I've got this whole mess on here where my tablet was going crazy and it painted all of these lines around it. So to fix this, I'm simply going to paint this with 50% gray. To do that, again, because I've got a brush selected right now, simply hold down my Option key and I can click on this 50% gray, and that made my foreground color 50% gray. And then I'm just going to make my brush considerably larger, and I'm just going to, you need to bring your opacity all the way back up again. And I'm just going to paint all of this away. and that will remove all of that problem. And then I need to rebuild this color. So I'm going to click on it, but I actually remember my values. I had a 22 for my hue, and then I'm going to come down to my saturation. I'm going to have to bump that in just a second, but I'm going to bump, where am I? Oh, I'm working on this soft light layer. I'm going to go back here to my tonal layer. Let's just turn this on and do this from scratch. I'm just going to click on my background layer here, click on my foreground color, click on the hue, click on the brightness, take it up into the mid 90s, click on the saturation, pull it down to the teens, say okay, and we're still off to the races. So now I've fixed that problem, and the only thing now that I've fixed is the pimple right there. So hold down your space bar, and I want you to go up underneath this girl's left, or her right eye, the eye that's on the right-hand side, and you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of little lines that are right underneath her face. So we're going to go after those guys again. I'm working still on my tonal retouch small layer. I'm going to then, again, and these are darker, I need to make them lighter, so my dodging color is actually there. I'm going to make it a much, much smaller brush. I'm actually going to zoom in one more state. That gives me a little bit better way to attack this guy. Pretty light in here, and so this is everybody's temptation, is to simply paint along a line like this. When you do that, you are going to ultimately you will actually fix the line that's in the middle, but then you're going to add to line on both of the edges, on both of the sides. They will end up getting lighter as well. And so again, instead of having a dark line, you're going to have two light lines in there, which are just as bad. Again, this is where I say you cannot paint this. Do not click and drag. Don't try to paint this thing like this. It is dot, 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 and it's a lot of them. So again, I start doing this work and I just get frantic about it. And you can see, oh, those are way, 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 way too light. It's because I haven't changed my opacity back down to 6%. So on Command Option Z, and I'm going to just tap back through to get rid of those guys. Yep, exact same colors. Those don't ever change. Now, for a different person, it'll be different colors. So this works on all skin color. This works on Caucasian, African American, Asian, does not matter. You just build the colors based on the skin that you're actually doing the work on. So I would not use this skin tone on me. My skin is much redder than hers. Hers has got a lot of, I think, yellow in it. Mine's got a lot of red in it. So I would base mine on me. Anyway. Okay, so with that now fixed, again, I'm at 7%, it'll be close enough. And then again, it's just dot, 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 dot. And you're just running it along, and you'll get frustrated with this. I can tell you right now, you'll get frustrated and you'll say, well, nothing is happening, I don't see anything that's happening. Again, if you do this off to the side, and we can look at our other image so that I can really see what's going on. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit on it too. And then continue to work on the zoomed in one. So again, dot, 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 that's all you're doing the whole time here. And then you can see, again, right here, that line is gone. If you use your eyeball on this, turn it on and off, you can see it totally got rid of that line. So again, if we take a look at the bigger version, gone. So you can see that this works really well. It doesn't touch the texture at all. It makes the skin eventually flawless. It just takes forever to do it. So a couple other things to think about. So in that same space where you are, did this work for everyone? You guys can go ahead and be working on this part as well. So there's a spot that's actually right underneath her eye right here. You can see it's a really bright white dot. So I want everybody to fix that. I'm going to actually get rid of this other image view for a second here. So that super white dot that's right underneath there, it's a burning color, so hit your X key to get to your burning color if you had your dodging color on. Make again your brush about that size, and then just start to dot, 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 dot this thing to death. And what you'll ultimately see is exactly what I'm seeing to mine. The problem is that if you keep doing this long enough, you never get that white to go away, but you put this beautiful frame around it so that not only was it obvious before, but now it's really obvious. Did that happen to all of you, right? So the problem with this is that there is no color or tone there to begin with, so there's nothing to dodge and burn. There are areas that are too light and too dark to dodge and burn. In that case, you have to replace them. But in our case right now, we've got this problem. I've got this halo that's around this thing. So again, hold down your Option key and click on the eyeball so you can see what the problem is. You've got this black ass dot that's sitting there, but look at the line. This is the retouching that I did for the line underneath. See all those beautiful little dots? That's what makes it organic and believable, and why you don't spot it a mile away, because you don't have this one line. So, but anyway, I need to fix this guy. I don't want to change my foreground and background colors again, so I'm just going to hit the L key to get the lasso tool. I'm going to circle around this problem, and then I'm going to go up to the Edit menu, down to Fill, and in my drop-down box, not Stroke, Fill, and in my drop-down box, in the contents, I'm going to pick 50% gray, a normal blending mode, 100% opacity, and hit OK, and that is now removed. So now hit Command D to deselect, turn on your bottom layer again, and you're now back again to the problem, but you got rid of the frame that's around it. Does that make sense to everyone? We good? Okay. To fix this area, you actually need to go to your Pixel Retouch layer. So click on the Pixel Retouch layer, and we are going to fix this using the Healing Brush tool. So to do that, come over to your tools on the left-hand side. Again, the Healing Brush group. You do not want to do the spot healing. You want to do the Healing Brush tool, and you can make it much smaller. So the default for the Healing Brush tool, we have reset both of these, so we need to reset them back to their normal one. So right off the bat, hit the S key. Let's change the the clone stamp tool first. Hit the S key, click on your drop-down menu, and you want to change it to 50%. That is the default hardness of the clone stamp tool. And then click on your Healing Brush tool. Again, not the spot healing, but the regular Healing Brush tool, and change its its hardness also to 50%. When we get into doing frequency separation, we will change these values up a little bit, but for the time being, these are the defaults, so it's a good place for us to start. So I am going to go after this part right here, but the thing is that you have to realize that, again, I'm going to replace this with texture, and then it's going to bring the color that surrounds it in. So that's basically what I'm going to do. So in looking for this, what you want to do when you're picking a source is you want to do the least amount of change possible. So I have options here where I could actually choose. I'm looking at the area that's around it. I could actually take a version of this. Well, you'll see. Again, I'm trying to do the least amount of damage to this image that I can possibly do. So I'm going to hover on the area that's right underneath this, hold down my Option key, click to set my source point right here, and then simply scrub over the top of that and let go. And that part's actually gone now. This is what I said to you before, though, about replacing texture. There's a smoothness right here. I don't have any of the texture that's down here of the skin where you see the crinkly parts, all of that. So if you wanted to, there's a couple of other places around here that we could actually fix. All I'm doing is, my source point is, the only thing it's doing is the texture. So if I set the texture here, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to hold down my Option key and click to set my texture right here. If you uncheck this aligned at the very top, you can come down and you can hit this white point that's further down, and you'll see where that little black X is. It still goes back to where there is no texture, which is what I want. I want to just smooth this out, and I can do this all over. There's another place that's right up here by her eyelash that I need to get rid of, and that texture, again, it's not going to bring the color of that in, it's just bringing the texture in. And since I don't want any texture at all in those spots, it actually does a really good job of it. You can even do the dark part on here a little bit, the dark part on that eyelash. However, in the areas where you don't need to fix this, the white dots, you do not do this pixely, you do this tonally. So there's a couple of other little white dots that are around here, and again, you can see now I don't have to resample every single time, because I am just leaving it on the texture spot where there is no texture. So that's where this whole alignment tool thing comes in. And I've knocked most of the super bright spots out. One big mistake that people make, look up at the red part of her eye. people actually go after the catch lights in her eye. If you want somebody to look dead, you remove the catch lights in their eyes because their eyes completely dry out. So do not remove the catch lights for the eyes. Don't remove the shiny parts on lips. You can balance lips out, but if you remove all of the highlights on a lip, they look dead. They look like sandpaper. Eyes look like sandpaper. No, there's reasons that you want people to look dead. If you are Helmut Newton and you're shooting in the 1970s, he made a fortune out of doing fashion for French Vogue where all the people were dead. They're all like laying on the bed, all bloody and stuff after wild sex and then murdered each other. That was those pictures. You would remove those catch lights. But in this, you don't. Does this make sense, everybody, what's going on here? Okay, so that'll set you up for that part. The two last things we need to talk about are, I'm going to double click on my hand to kick all the way back out. We need to talk about the tonal retouching large areas. So I'm going to zip into the right side, to her face a little bit more. Again, these are much larger areas that we would be dealing with. So you do not want to do this on your small retouching layer. The reason you don't want to do that is that your small retouching layer gets so complicated that if you go in then and start to do these larger areas and you make a mistake, you have to redo all of that small work, all that detail work that took you so long to do. You don't want that to happen. So you want to keep your large area work on one layer and your small on another so that if something goes wrong, you do not have to rebuild that small layer. And believe me, it'll happen if you don't pay attention to it. So I'm going to click the eyeball for the tonal retouching large layer. I'm going to select it to make it the one that I'm actually working on. I'm going to hit the B key again to get a brush. I'm going to make my brush much larger. The area that I'm looking for right now is this area. There's a highlight right on her cheek right here. Right underneath it, there is a darker area over to the side, a little bit darker. She also has a mustache line. All of that, I want to lift that all up using my tonal retouching large. So I've still got a 7% opacity. Doing this larger work, that might be too aggressive. You might have to get down to like a 2 or 3%. We'll find out. I'm going to hit the X key to make my foreground color my dodging color and still make sure that this is a completely soft brush. It is. And then I'm just again on my tonal retouching large layer, start to tap, tap, tap just to lighten things up. And that's it. Don't overdo this. I'm going to go after the mustache line. And again, you say, well, Verser, that doesn't look like I'm doing a damn thing. Turn this layer on and off now. It's massive. It actually, in my opinion, it's too much. It's too strong. Again, I did very few taps and I hit it way too quick. So with this layer, I'm going to get rid of all of that by filling the entire layer again with 50% gray. That removes it all. And then I'm going to really drop my opacity down. I'm going to go down to like a 2%, 1%, 2%, something like that, 3%, and I'm going to try it again. Yeah, it gives me a little bit more control. I still think it may be a little too aggressive. Again, tap, 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 tap. Turn this eyeball on and off again, and you'll see the work that you've actually done. That is beautiful. I've got another thing that's right in her side of her nose right here that needs to be lightened up. Blah, 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 blah. So that's how you would go about this part. For the texture that's on the side of this is all tonal retouch small. So back to tonal retouch small, opacity back up to 6%, brush much smaller. And this is how I start. So I'm just going to show you guys how I do this. And then we've got one last thing to look at really quickly, and we are done. So typically I will start with the dodging stuff first. So I've got my light color here, my dodging stuff. And again, you want to start and you want to move quick. You want to move all over the place. Don't try to finish something in any one area. Don't like say, okay, I've got to get this little line in here completely light. Don't do that. What you're really looking for is more commonality in this. You're looking to make the darker things lighter, but the lighter things darker as well. So I'm just going to start here. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, tap, tap. I'm moving around. I'm coming up into here. Tap, 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 tap. Up into here, this next section up in here, back to this a little bit again, whatever, around here, down into this part into here. Keep moving. Don't stay in one place. And then if you feel like you're not doing anything, again, turn this light on and off again, and you can see you're doing quite a bit. And then again, I'm going to continue to work here. Hit the X key when you get bored with that and go into your dodging color part. And so again, I can hit all of these parts here. Does this make sense what's going on here? Yes? All right. Do you have the reference photos? The tonal retouch large reference and the tonal retouch small reference photo? Do you have those in your... I'm just going to click on the PNG and open up the small reference. This is an example of one of these that was really well done. Look at this. This takes hours and hours and hours to do well. Does this make sense what you're looking at here? This is all that work right here, all that work on the cheek where we are right now. This is what it took. This is the tonal retouch large version of it. Much softer, much bigger areas. Make sense? I want to show you one copy of this that was done really well, and then we've got one last thing that we actually need to do. Tonal retouch small, tonal retouch large. Look at this. Any idea how long this takes? You guys ask for it, but this is what the big money takes. This is how it's done. Again, look at this skin. There's the only thing that has been done here is dodging and burning. I mean, this is insane, but she still has texture. Are we good on this part? All right, one last thing we need to take care of. I call it the cigarette burn. We have 3 minutes. We're in good shape. So it's this thing on the lower part of her cheek right here. A makeup artist tried to cover this with makeup, and you might say, okay, they did a great job. I would say that. So you can't really go after this tonally. This will actually never work. It's the color is off, the tone is off, everything is off here. You've got to replace this. So you go back to your pixel retouching layer, and we are going to do this 4 different ways. So we're going to do them really quickly. I'm going to show you how to do them. We're going to pick the one we like the best, and then you guys are out of here. So we're going to start with the spot healing brush tool first. So click on the spot healing brush. It's the one at the very top. Make sure that your content aware is turned on. Now the thing about all the healing brushes is that you need to completely cover, or all the healing ones, you need to completely cover this guy. If you only do half of it and then let go of your cursor, it's going to take the surrounding area, which is this bad dark area, and blend that in as the color replacement. So you can't do that. You've got to hit all of it at once. So you do this. You just start to paint across all of it. Before you let go, make sure you've got all of it and then let go. And then you're going to hit a history snapshot of this, and I'm going to call it spot healing. And then I'm going to go back 1 step in history, because I've got a history state up here at the top that will show me what it looked like when I spot healed it. So that's the first tool. We're going to do the next one down. Again, go back 1 step in history to undo that part. We're going to go to the, again, the spot healing part's off. We're going to go to the next one down. So click on your tool set, and it's the remove tool. And in the remove tool, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to paint across this entirety. It paints it in a pink thing, and let go. This is now using AI to do it. And that's going to be the next one that I save. So I'm going to color snapshot this, and I'm going to call it, history snapshot, remove tool. And guys, I can't tell you which one is going to be the best. This is exactly the way I do it. And then again, I'm going to go back 1 step in history to bring it back. The next tool down is the healing brush tool, where I picked the healing part. So again, make my tool larger. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to come below this and to the left a little bit. Hold down my Option key to set my source point. And then again, you have to paint across the entirety of it all. And I'm going to do a snapshot of that and call it the healing brush tool. And then go back 1 more step in history. And the final one I'm going to do is the patch tool. So in the patch tool, you pick that, and again, in the patch tool, you select the destination, the area that needs to be fixed first, and then you drag that selection to the area that you want to use to replace it. Now you can see there's a color mismatch in this right now. It's darker on the side and lighter on the side. That's okay. When you let go, you'll get the second part of that tool. Command D to deselect, and I'm going to name this the patch tool. And then we're just going to look at the differences. So all the way up at the very top, this is the spot healing tool. Not bad. I can see it, but not bad. This is the remove tool. Horrible. The healing brush tool. That's pretty good. I'm going to look at the difference between that and the spot healing brush tool. The healing brush tool that I did is infinitely better. It fades back in better. And then finally the patch tool. And the patch tool to me, hands down, wins it. Save your file, and I'll see you guys next week. So, did everybody who wanted to turn in files for this thing get them turned in? There's the hard drive right there. Is there anyone else that needs to submit on this? Okay, so Janessa needs that afterwards. Did everybody get to drop the homework? I'm going to show you what is in the Dropbox just to make sure that yours is there. I'm going to stop the video really quickly.